Hey ladies, welcome back to the show. On today's episode, we are going to talk about turning passive intention into an active commitment towards your health, wellness, and self-care goals. When it comes to making lasting changes, when it comes to our health, we are often our biggest obstacle. We may say things like, I'm going to try to eat better. Maybe I'll work out. There's this passive language where you're saying I'll try or maybe I'll do it. But it's also something that can keep us in this planning phase rather than actually taking action, this passive language. In order to see real results, whether it's losing weight, boosting your energy, improving mental clarity, exercising more, drinking more water, having less stress, you need to move from passive intention to active commitment, where really this means shifting from I'll try to being more committed or saying that you're committed to something. On today's episode, we are going to talk about why passive language can hold you back and 8 things that you can do to start thinking about your health, wellness, and self-care goals and getting more into an active commitment and turning the goal into reality. Welcome to the Whole Health Empowerment Project podcast. This show is for women over 40 who are trying to create balance in their life when it comes to food, body, self-care, and wellness. You struggle to put yourself first, to maintain consistency when something isn't perfect, or maybe you feel like you don't have enough time or willpower to achieve the goals you desire. I'm your host, Trisha Stefankowitz, registered dietitian, nutritionist. I've worked with women like you achieve their goals by focusing on the next best step, no matter how messy, and meeting you where you are right now. In this show, you'll learn practical information, actionable strategies, and mindset tweaks so that you can feel healthier, more comfortable in your body, and make choices that work for your life. Come join me in failing forward, one imperfect step at a time, into the journey of health, wellness, and self-care. Welcome to your new project. When you say, I'll try, or maybe, it's a way that you're giving yourself an out in case you aren't able to follow through with what it is that you want. This language implies that there is an option to fail or not to do that thing, and that particular goal probably isn't your top priority. It has no sense of urgency that a real commitment typically requires. An example that I'll use here is when someone invites you to their house or a friend invites you to a party over the weekend and you're not 100% committed to it. You're not really sure if you're going to go or something else is going to come up, or maybe you just don't feel like going. So a lot of times we'll say something like, well, maybe I'll come, I might come. And in your mind, you're giving yourself an out in case you decide that you perhaps really don't want to go. And so this is the same language that oftentimes we use when it comes to our health. We'll say, maybe I'll come or maybe I'll do this. The problem is that when you're saying that, there is room for probability that you're not going to show up to that party. And the same when it comes to your health goals. When you say something like, I'll be there, you're committing yourself that you're going to be at that party. You're giving yourself and holding yourself accountable for that follow through. And so this is the same follow through that is needed when you're making a health change too. In health and wellness, the language you use matters. It shapes your mindset, and your mindset will influence your actions. So if you're constantly giving yourself wiggle room to not follow through with the goal that you have, then most likely you're not going to ever get to the goal that you really want. So that's why passive language holds you back. What do you do about that? How do you get to a place that you shift from I'll try, or this ambivalence, or this idea that maybe you want to make an attempt at making a health change, but you're a little bit scared that you're going to fail and you're not really sure that you want to commit because you may have committed in the past and it just didn't work out. We're going to talk about 8 different ideas for you to think about when it comes to changing your language from something like I'll try to figuring out how you can really start to focus on being more committed to the goal that you have. Rather than changing everything all at once, the first suggestion is to identify one area and to focus on that. Years ago, I ran a weight loss class, and in that class, there was a million different things that participants had to change. Well, not a million, but there was a lot. And oftentimes what would happen is it would be so overwhelming for people to get food and to be on a calorie deficit and then to try to do physical activity. And we know that if you're able just to focus on one thing at a time, you pick one thing and improve it, and as you start to get better at that, then you can start to add more things on rather than having all of these things be your goal and then not being good at any of them and failing. The first goal here is to identify one area to focus on. Do you want to focus on nutrition? Eating more vegetables, eating more protein, eating more things with fiber, or something else? Do you want to focus on exercise, moving more consistently, adding more strength training? Is that something that is important to you right now? Do you want to focus on sleep, getting more rest, prioritizing a minimum of 7 hours of sleep at night? Or do you want to focus on your mental health and self-care practices, mindfulness, making sure that you take time for yourself every day, meditating, something to help with your stress management? I want you to ask yourself, what area of my health feels the most important to change right now? And so this is going to drive you, and this is where it's really going to start, that you can start to turn that terminology around. And I would do something that maybe doesn't feel so big and that's going to have the most impact in your life right now. I know it's going to be hard, especially if you're looking through these categories and saying, gosh, I could change all 4 of them. Pick the one that's going to be the one that's going to help you get to the next one. Because the goal here is to build upon these once you get better and better at and more consistent and more committed to these practices. Instead of having vague intentions like, I'll try to exercise more or I'll try to eat a certain way, I want you to start thinking about specific non-negotiable goals. Because when you're able to commit to that and you're able to have a time-bound limit on that, it's going to be easier to hold yourself accountable. If your goal ends up being that you want to exercise more, then be more specific and say, I will work out for 30 minutes 3 times a week. So you have the goal and you have the time-bound part of it too, the 3 times a week. When your goal is specific and it's time-bound, it's easier to hold yourself accountable. You'll know exactly what you need to do and when you need to do it. Second part would be to set a clear and specific goal. Now that you have decided what area of your life is going to have the most impact when you're able to commit, start thinking about an actionable goal that will help in your life. Instead of saying you'll eat better, define exactly what that means. For example, you're going to add a certain amount of vegetables or a certain amount of protein to each meal at lunch and dinner. If sleep ends up being your goal that you're working on, give yourself a time frame that you want to be in bed by each night. So start with the category and then start to figure out what it is, very clear with what you're trying to achieve. You can ask yourself, what specific action can you commit to doing every day? And so each of these steps are going to build on to the next one. You've picked a goal, you've figured out how specific you want it to be, how many days a week you're going to do it. And then 3, you're going to start using definitive language. The way you frame your goals and the language that you use is important here. Replace any language that feels vague or uncertain or tentative with something that feels more committed and firm. For example, instead of saying, I'll try to eat healthier, I'll try to drink more water, I'll try to exercise, start saying, I'm committed to eating a balanced meal with protein, veggies, and healthy fats every day. I'm committed to being in bed by 10 o'clock every night. I'm committed to working out 30 minutes a day, 3 days a week. So you're changing that language to I'll try, which can be ambiguous, or it can just be not very clear or not very firm, to committing and making that commitment to yourself. And when you say, I'm committed, you're telling yourself that it's a non-negotiable, that it's not something you're going to quote unquote try to fit in. It's something that you've made a commitment to yourself. You're holding yourself responsible. So it's going to happen. And when you're able to make that language shift, oftentimes you'll also have that shift in your mindset. By making your goal a commitment rather than an intention, you'll be able to follow through more on what it is you're trying to achieve. So for you, using definitive language is the third step. Instead of saying, I'll try, focusing on more in saying what you're committed to doing. You can ask yourself here, how will you reframe your language when it comes to making a firm commitment? How will you change your language when you're thinking that maybe when you're thinking of what your goal is and you start to hear yourself saying that you'll try? What is it that you'll say instead to make it feel firmer and something that will hold you accountable to yourself? Steps number 4 and 5 go together. The fourth one is to start small and build. Begin with a small, achievable daily action that you're going to take. These things should be something that you can realistically commit to even when you're busy and tired. It's like a small win. These small wins are going to help build momentum and increase your confidence. So if you're somebody who is committed to working out 30 minutes, 3 days a week, maybe start with doing 20 minutes, 3 days a week, right? If your bigger goal is that my guess is that if you're committing to 30 minutes, 3 times a week, you have a goal that's probably bigger than that. Maybe you really want to work out 60 minutes. So just saying something like that might be enough that that's your baby step, the 30 minutes to get to the bigger goal that you're trying to do. What is important here is that you are picking these little things that you can do that as you add on to them, they then become your big goal that you're working towards. And so I want you to ask yourself, what small step can you take today to move towards your goal? And this then comes in line with step number 5, which is breaking down big goals into daily commitments. Big health goals can feel really overwhelming because they take a long time to achieve, and it's hard to maintain that momentum. If it's going to be a pretty long time to achieve the goal, it's hard to stay focused on what that goal is. And it's tempting to fall back into old behaviors and then also not holding yourself accountable. Instead, focus on the bigger picture and break your goals down into daily commitments. So for example, weight loss is something that most women here want to achieve. Instead of saying, I want to try to lose 20 pounds. Say I'm committed to walking 8,000 steps a day or 10,000 steps today, whatever that looks like for you. And what I would say is if you're not walking 10,000 steps, if you're walking 1,000 steps, then maybe your goal today is that you can walk 1,000 steps today and that you can do that consistently. And then once you're able to do that consistently, then you up the amount of steps that you're going to take. The goal is to make it work for you. So a lot of times when I work with women, it'll be this big goal that I'm going to work out every day. It's very hard to achieve your goal when you're only working out one day a week to all of a sudden go to like a 7 day a week workout. So what I would say to you would be to really start to practice that one behavior. Again, if it's 1,000 steps a day, practice being consistent with that first. And then as you start to do that more and more consistently, increase that. Because then what you're doing is you are making this, you're taking action every day, you're being consistent. And so even though it may feel small, it's giving you a win. And that commitment that you're having to yourself every day starts to build momentum, and each win adds up. And soon you'll be adding more and more steps onto that goal. And you're going to start to see that you're making real progress towards what your larger goal may be. And if that is 8,000 steps, well, sure, you're going to be there in no time if you're able to be consistent. So having this idea that you're breaking down big goals into daily commitments. Oftentimes, it's hard to just say, I'm going to start walking 10,000 steps when you're not even close to that. So starting with where you are today and what is achievable to you so that it's a small win, building on the consistency of that, and then adding on to the bigger goal as you feel like you can. And that bigger goal is 10,000 steps. Step number 6 is to track your progress. This game is about where you are now and where you were in the past or before you started. I would use a journal, a habit tracker, a calendar, anything that you have to track the progress that you've made. Every day that you follow through, mark it down. This is going to be a visual reminder of the commitment that you have made to yourself. And it can be very motivating to look back and to say, oh my gosh, look what I did this week. I worked out 3 days. And then you go to the next week. Oh my gosh, look what I did. I worked out 5 days. And a lot of times people are looking for motivation, but that is where you're going to find the motivation when you can look back and see that you've followed through on the things that you said you were going to do. But oftentimes we don't ever do that look back, and we forget to celebrate those small wins. But it's really important to do that, especially when you're in a place that it feels like nothing is working and that you're not doing a good enough job, or that your goals are taking longer to achieve. Having that look back of your small wins will be a way to keep you on track so that you can keep looking forward and you don't stop. And then eventually you can achieve the goal that you desire. Number 7 would be, let's talk about accountability. Accountability to yourself or accountability with other people. To get out of that passive mindset, ask yourself some tough questions that can prompt you to take ownership of your actions. I think most of us want to take accountability for our actions, but sometimes it can feel really hard to do that. So I want you to start thinking about some of the things that are holding you back and that are keeping you in a passive language when it comes to a goal that you really, really, really want to achieve, but you haven't quite gotten yourself out of that planning phase. What are some of the reasons that you're stuck in the I'll try phase? Is it because you're scared to fail again? Is it because you don't have the time to commit, but you want to think that you're doing something? How committed are you to actually seeing change in your life right now? What does that look like to you? What can you commit to? And this also goes back to starting where you're at and not overcommitting, which can end up selling yourself short in the long term because you may not actually be ready to make a big commitment. And starting where you are is a way that you can still commit and feel like you're taking like a committed role in your health. Even if it doesn't feel like a lot, it's enough that it can keep you going forward. A part of this accountability is also seeing what actions you're taking every day to see how serious it is that you are about your health. A lot of people will say, oh, I want to get healthy. But then when they look back at their day, it got derailed early on, and then it was really hard to get back on track. So I think it's important to really start to see what it is you're doing every day and what you can commit to when it comes to your health. And also knowing that if you continue not to follow through, what does that look like in 6 months? Does it look like you're in the same position, that there's no change? Does it look like the weight gain continues? Does it seem like your energy is going to still be shit? What does it look like? And also alternately looking at what will your life look like if you do commit fully to this change. If you do decide that you can commit to 1,000 steps a day because your goal is for weight loss, and then you can get to a place that you can do 2,000 steps a day, what does that look like to you? It may not feel like a lot when you're in the moment, but if you go back and look at where you were 6 months ago, it's going to seem like a really big commitment. These questions are meant to help you identify any of the underlying fear or hesitation that you're holding within you. And hopefully they will also start to push you forward to take real action and to start using language that can be more empowering to you and that can be and help you commit to the goal that you're trying to achieve. It's all about taking action and how and when you can get yourself into a place to take action. If you're looking for accountability outside of yourself, start talking about your goals to someone who you trust, whether that's a friend or family member, and ask them to check in with you. When you know someone else is watching, you're going to be way more likely to want to stick to your word with them. I find it that for a lot of people, myself included, it's much easier to keep the commitment that I've had and that I make with other people than I make with myself. And so perhaps you find yourself in that position too. Then find somebody that you can talk to about the commitment that you've made to yourself. And maybe they want to make that same commitment too. So today, I want you to ask yourself, who can you share your goal with that can help keep you accountable, that you trust? And especially if you're in a place that you can't hold yourself accountable, is there someone else out there that you can stay committed to because you don't want them to see you fail? One of the most powerful ways to move yourself from intention to action is to involve someone else in your journey. Having that extra support and having someone hold your hand through it can make it so much smoother. And it can help you stay accountable, and it's going to be much harder for you to not do it because you know that someone's watching and holding you accountable. And the last thing would be to reflect and adjust. Every week, reflect on how you're doing. Are you sticking to the commitment? Do you need to adjust anything? Is there something that would be more realistic to you? Or are you finding it really challenging and you need to revise what it is you're doing? This reflection is really going to be the thing that helps you stay engaged with the process of the change that you're trying to make. And it's going to be important too to figure out what is working well and what do you need to adjust. Because if something isn't working well, it's going to be really hard for you to stay focused and to keep moving forward if it's not working. And so it's important to reflect on this so that you can figure out what would make this commitment work better. What do you need to do? Do you need to involve somebody? Is there something that you need to think about in order to make this something that can be a goal that you achieve? To help you get started, we're going to talk about a few examples of health, wellness, and self-care shifts that you can start to turn into active commitments. When it comes to eating differently, instead of saying, I'm going to try to eat differently this week, you can start to say, I'm committed to eating 3 meals a day, 2 meals being extra protein and fiber. When it comes to exercise, instead of saying, I'm going to try to move my body twice this week, be more specific. I'm committing to moving my body. I'm going to try to walk 20 minutes so many days a week. For sleep, you're committed to going to bed by a certain period of time, maybe 10 p.m. And as you can see, these commitments are simple, realistic, and easy to measure. And they require you to take action every day, reinforcing the idea that you're actively working towards a healthier you. And that's what's important too, is that you feel like it's a goal that you can achieve, that over time, if you keep practicing, you're going to feel like you are working towards your bigger goal. And I think a lot of times we go through these jags where we work on our goals, we stop. We work on our goals, we stop. But if you're able to say that you're committed and to do something every day, even if you have a shitty day, you can look back and say, wow, I worked towards my health goals today. I did something that may not seem like a lot to other people, but it was something that kept you active and that kept you committed to yourself. So as we end this episode, I want to remind you that this passive language that we use will be really hard to take us to our goal. And oftentimes it's going to keep us in a place that we don't quite take action. And if we're able to start talking about being more committed to our goals and saying that you're committed to your goals, you're also going to have a mindset shift that you're taking action, and then repeated action will lead to results that you want. By setting clear, specific goals using language that is more committed versus very passive, asking yourself accountability questions, having an accountability partner, breaking your goals down into smaller incremental goals and things that you can do on a daily basis, you can really start to turn your health and wellness goals into the reality that you want it to be. So as we end this episode, I want to remind you that it's not about trying, it's about doing. And you can say, I'll try to do this, but are you really going to follow through? Probably not. But saying that I'm going to really try to commit to this today, my guess is that you're going to see much more follow through with just that simple shift in your language in terms of your progress. Committing to yourself today and then watching how your mindset shifts and your language will shift and your progress then keeps going. For today, I want you to ask yourself, what health goal will you commit to? Will it be nutrition? Will it be exercise? Will it be something with your finances? Will it be hydration? Will it be mindfulness? Will it be meditation? How will you make sure that you follow through, right? Setting these goals of what you want to do and really starting to think of a plan that's going to get you to where you want to go. You don't have to change everything all at once. You just have to start with one small thing today and then keep building upon that thing. And remembering that it's not perfection we're looking for here. It's progress. It's always progress over perfection. It's whatever you can do that can give you a small win today, that if you continue to repeat that same action day after day and building upon it, you will start to get some reinforcement and you're going to be more and more committed that eventually you'll be able to achieve the goal that you desire. I thank you all for listening and I look forward to seeing you guys back here next week. Have a great week. Thanks so much for listening to this episode. If you found value in this podcast, please rate, review, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Don't forget to share this episode with your friends. Together, we can take tiny, imperfect steps towards creating the whole health we desire and deserve. Don't forget to grab your freebie. You can find the link in your show notes or over at triciard.com. I'll see you back here next week.